Get ready, Brooklyn, because by the time you hear this, you will have spent a weekend at Bernie's. That's right. America's favorite socialist grandpa visits Brooklyn College on March 2nd. And here to tell us more about his past, present, and future is 112BK resident pundit Nick Rizzo. Nick, welcome back.
So great to be here, MacKenzie. Thanks for having me.
So you were a big Bernie supporter in 2016, correct?
I was indeed.
And what about now?
So I'm not all the way there with Bernie yet because, you know, effectively we were shopping in an ice cream store with 2 flavors, and now we're in an ice cream store with like 30. But I'm leaning towards him, I'd say.
Okay.
I mean, he certainly has issue positions that I don't see the other candidates replicating yet that are close to mine. But, you know, I think every single candidate in this race does have flaws, and the flaws are obvious.
Sure, we're all human.
Quite.
What are some of the other non-Bernie flavors that you are sampling?
So someone from like the Midwest or the West would be interesting, like Sherrod Brown or Amy Klobuchar or Kamala Harris, or I'm interested in both of the Texans who are running, Beto O'Rourke and Julian Castro. Elizabeth Warren, I've thought, has been delivering a very muscular, progressive message lately that I think is interesting. I think you'd be foolish to count out Kirsten Gillibrand. She's a really smart operator. And I'm leaving, you know, 5 other good candidates out, including the millennial mayor of South Bend, Indiana, Pete Buttigieg.
That's right, who also visited Brooklyn somewhat recently.
Yeah, I missed that one, but I'm definitely going to try to learn more about him at some point.
Yeah,
There's
people
a lot I
seem to
about
like
him.
that guy.
My theory is, for me, the most important thing is a presidential nominee who recognizes that times are really different, that we can't keep doing the same old when like the world is on power and like nationalists are in power across the world.
Right. So, I mean, this is going to be a very different election from 4 years ago.
Yeah.
What does Bernie need to do differently?
I think Bernie needs to reach out to non-white voters more, probably. I'm not sure he actually needs to broaden his coalition necessarily more than he has, just because, you know, if he can hold on to most of his voters and sort of, let's say, Hillary's voters split among a number of candidates, that's the nomination for him right there. I've had a lot of people who supported Hillary last time suggest to me that they'd be open to supporting Bernie this time. There are also people who are very insistent that we not nominate Bernie, though I hear that about almost every nominee already.
Sure, sure. So you mentioned sort of the overshadowing of non-white, straight, cis men who support Bernie by this Bernie bro phenomenon.
Right.
Would you have any advice to Bernie bros about how to behave this time around so as not to damage their candidate?
Yeah, actually, without getting into it too much, I'm a pretty left-wing person, but I've was really getting into it over the last couple weeks with the supporters of a candidate, even more left-wing than mine. And it got incredibly vituperative online from these anonymous accounts who by and large, don't live in New York and I'm never going to meet. And it's scary. I think people who are newer to politics often behave quite harshly, and they don't. It can be hard to understand that your enemy in the primary is normally your ally in the general election. So I understand that often calls for civility or bipartisanship are a mask to let the unjust doings of the status quo continue. But I really do think that we've lost a lot of civility and listening in our country in the last few years. And I think we all need to work to try to bring back some of it. And that includes Bernie Sanders supporters.
And I think that point you made that your enemy in the primaries is actually the person you will probably be supporting in the general is one of the main complaints about Bernie and his supporters, is that there was a lot of misogyny around Hillary and that maybe Bernie didn't do enough to bring his flock to her during the general election.
My take on that is, like, let's look at like the Democratic Convention of 2016. I think there was a lot that was strategically stupid or inappropriate about some of the Bernie delegates making a scene at the convention. But at the same time, this notion of the Bernie bro who abandoned Hillary in droves in the 2016 general election is mostly not true. Of course, there were Bernie Sanders supporters who didn't vote for Hillary, but the percentage of that percentage is less than half the percentage of Hillary Clinton supporters in 2008 who didn't vote for Barack Obama in the general election. So maintaining the support of everyone from the primary into the general has been a challenge no matter who your candidate is, whether they're from the left faction of the party or the more centrist faction of the party.
So what do you think about Bernie tossing his hat in the ring for president again? Some people are saying, you know, Bernie, we love that you've moved the party to the left. It would be great to have you in a more advisory capacity to, you know, throw your support behind maybe a younger person of color, a woman. What do you say to that?
Yeah, well, I don't think there's an obvious candidate is the problem. I think everyone would like Bernie Sanders to be younger, especially Bernie Sanders. But I don't think... The crucial thing for people to understand is that there's now a large swath of Americans, mostly young people, who want a democratic socialist candidate. And there isn't another candidate yet who's, you know, 35 years old and a natural-born U.S. citizen, who's willing to take on that mantle. The question for me is, does his, to my mind, perhaps better perspective beat out the negatives that will come from being quite aged? And I don't know.
To me, he sounds like an ideal vice presidential candidate.
Yeah, I mean, the most important thing when you're selecting vice president, too often I think it becomes a little bit of a political decision. It should be a political decision, but the most important thing is to remember that you're trying to select a person who's, if they become the president, they're becoming a president during a crisis. And so you need someone who's able to take the reins. I'm not saying Bernie couldn't do that, but too often we select for balance, I think, and not for, you know, who's the right person for the job. But I really do believe already it's clear with the possible Democratic nominees, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. The more that we work together, the stronger we are.
So you yourself are a democratic socialist.
I am.
How do we think democratic socialism plays nationwide? I think that we have gone from it not being a term that many people have even heard of to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, of course, right. Bernie Sanders. Do we think that people are still as scared of the word socialism as they used to be, or are people willing to embrace it?
I mean, there's no question that they're not as scared as they used to be, right? I mean, we never saw any mainstream American politicians like this for the last 90 years espousing these positions. So the fact that they're able to get out there and thrive at all shows that something's shifting.
Or maybe they were espousing similar positions, but not under the mantle of socialism.
What I've also seen a number of times in the last year or two is that most people don't care. Most people want help with their problems, and nowadays they're willing to pragmatically take whatever form that comes in. Look, the Republicans definitely think that attacking Democrats for being socialists is the best play they've got. They're spending a lot of time trying to pin as much as they can on Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and every day that they do that, it makes her stronger and more popular. They attack Bernie for this, and he appears to be the most popular politician in America. So the tag does not really seem to be sticking anymore, is my belief. I'm sure there's some parts of the country where it's a problem, but so far, I've been shocked by how little I've encountered it being a problem.
I mean, I do think it is a generational thing because you and I are of a generation where, you know, the Cold War was ending when we were kids, and, you know, the specter of communism and the Soviets coming really hasn't been an issue in our lifetime, although, you know, the Russians coming to control our government is a different thing.
Yeah, but they're not communists.
They're not communists,
anymore. And the communism is terrible. I'm not trying to justify communism as a whole, and I think most, but not all, democratic socialists are also against that. The way I define millennials is if you're too young to remember morning in America, the 1984 Reagan re-election, where Reagan creams Walter Mondale, wins 49 states. So if you're born after 1981, maybe, 1982, you definitely don't remember that. But old enough to remember 9/11. If that describes you, you're a millennial. But if you don't have much experience of the Cold War, if you don't have much experience of, that kind of bifurcation in American culture between, you know, the free world and the commies.
So let's bring things back to the local a little bit.
Please.
By the time this airs, Bernie will have visited Brooklyn.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to have had seen it.
Are you going?
I am going.
Why is he kicking things off here, aside from the fact that, of course, he's a hometown boy? Can you do a Bernie impression, by the way?
Millionaires and billionaires are taking what we need from our culture and giving it all to buy yachts. It's unacceptable. I'm gonna go play some stickball.
That real plosive of yachts.
Plosive yachts.
Yeah.
That's right. I think we are a cultural center of America, certainly, and we're a big group of people. More people live in Brooklyn than any other county in the East Coast. But yes, I think it's a bunch of things. But I think it's definitely traditionally you sort of return to your roots for a kickoff or for a headquarters. So, for instance, Kirsten Gillibrand is from upstate New York. Her campaign headquarters is in Troy. A lot of the times you go back to your sort of maybe your high school to make your announcement. So Bernie started at Brooklyn College before transferring to the University of Chicago. So I guess this is his way of going national. I think last time he announced in Vermont, but he certainly was not as big a deal the last time he announced for president.
Well, Nick Rizzo, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Always great to be here, MacKenzie. Thanks.